okay, we are live. How does it feel? Does it feel different to be live than to not be live?
Honestly, I wouldn't know the difference. Like, it's like, I don't know. Yeah, I can't tell. So
Well,
I
now
see the thing that says live, but that's
yeah,
about
yeah, yeah, there's
so
people coming in. This is very exciting.
that's super
Um,
fun.
so yeah, so we can just chat a little bit. Like, one of the fun things about doing this for me is that even though I often end up inviting my friends to do these live chats with me, I end up learning so much about people that I knew already, and, like, definitely that's the case with you, because I was, like, doing all my homework leading up to this, and I was like, "I didn't know Geeta worked with Spike Lee. I
That's
didn't
so
know he
funny.
worked on fiction films." Like, I didn't know any of this, even though
That's
I've known you how
hilarious.
long have we known each other? When did we
We've
meet?
known each other. We really met around the time of the chicken and egg grant when we got that grant, which was
Right.
pre-COVID, right?
2017, 2016?
2017. It was you, me, Dom Porter, Grace Lee, right? Like we all were
What
in
a
that
cohort,
cohort.
and
Yeah.
Kirsten
And
Johnson.
Kirsten Johnson. Right. We were in that cohort together. And that
Yeah,
was
right. It
like
was you, me, Dawn Porter, Kirsten, who am I forgetting? One more. Oh, and Grace
Grace
Lee.
Lee. Grace Lee.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
was
that
such
was
a cool cohort. Like and folks that I now and still consider family because of that, you know?
I love that. Yeah, that was, like,
Yeah.
a really special cohort, and I always think about, back then, the Chicken and Egg Award was called the Breakthrough Award.
The breakthrough.
And do you remember that on the application, like, the application question, one of the questions was, "What would breaking through mean to you?" Do you remember
Yes,
that?
I do. I do.
Do you
I do
remember what you
remember
answered?
that.
Do you remember what you answered? 'Cause
Yes, I
I remember
think
what I answered. What did you
I
say
I think at
back
the
in
time.
2017?
Sure. So I think at the time I had directed a couple films for sure. But I was still not able to really sustain myself financially. So I was editing. I was continuing to edit sometimes full time and like managing, directing on the side. And I was like breaking through for me would be to be able to do one thing. Like to not meaning to not have to also have a full-time job editing and then to direct. It would like
Right,
and to like be able to hang out with my kids and to have enough time to do that instead of having multiple jobs, which again, feel so lucky that I had the opportunity to edit and that I could make a living doing that. But like as I was trying to transition, it was also that people would consider me a director,
I
like that I
remember you
would be able
saying
to
this.
grow
Yes,
past.
now that you say that,
Yeah.
I remember that because at that time, you're right, like, a lot of people thought of you as an editor at that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um
And once an editor, always an editor, so never offended by that. I love it. Like
No, of course,
editors
yeah.
are the world. But I think for me it was just kinda like, will I be able to make the transition? So breaking through for me, that was part of it. What did you write? Do you remember? Was it the same thing? Like, I just wanna be able to
No,
no?
it was not. It was very different. What I said back in 2017, the question was, "What would breaking through mean to you?" And I wrote something about wanting to feel that I had earned a certain like, some kind of, like, trust. Like,
Yeah.
that I had, like, done enough, that I had, like, directed enough that, like that people would, like, somehow feel like they could take a chance on me or, like,
Right.
like, give me some credit for something that I had done. And it sounds vague, but I remember that it actually had happened because when I was writing grant applications for Hail Satan, one of the granting organizations, the Catapult Film Fund, literally said to me, like, "We don't really get this, but we're gonna
We're
support it
gonna
because
do
we
it.
trust you."
Yeah.
And I was like, "It happened! It
Yeah.
happened!" Like,
That's
someone
so
told
great.
me they trusted me and they, like,
Yeah.
believed that, like, based on my previous work, I could, like, do something else.
Yeah. Well, so Chicken and Egg, I remember, had too at that time, and I don't know if it still exists, but they had the We Believe in You grant. And it was
Oh,
like, that was so great. And it was a small amount of money. It was like
right.
$7,000. But
Yeah.
I got that
But
for one of,
it's the "we believe in you" part
yeah,
that,
it was
like
like, we're going to take a chance on you.
so do but
Don't,
this here's
don't
the other thing
screw it
now.
up.
It's been
Yeah.
10 years since we met and we were, like, asking ourselves what it would mean to break through. Do you feel like you've broken through now, or do you still
I do as a director. Like, honestly,
Okay.
I do feel like that I feel like I've been able to establish myself as a director and to be seen that way in my, in a career. And I've created, I've been really fortunate to have the opportunity to create, I think enough of a body of work that, I kind of made it to that other side.
You've
And I
made
think
the
though, but
transition.
Yeah, but I do think still for us as women in particular, just in general, right?
Mhm.
There's still that glass ceiling that exists for and the way that we are, again, what we are offered and how we are seen and our capabilities are just it's still there. It's still not equal. There
Yeah.
still isn't like equity and equality in the
Yeah.
industry. And if anything, under
Huh.
this current regime, it's worse, right? So I
Right.
think it's something I feel like even like we have obviously and I've watched you too, been able to progress in our careers, but yet at the same time, it feels like the world around us is trying to crush, all the progress that we've made and that,
Totally.
our colleagues have made. So I think that's the fight.
I
That's the
think it's
fight we have
true.
to continue.
So let me ask you this as kind of a general way to get this conversation going. If you were to give me like a little bit of a thumbnail of your career, like how you kind of became a filmmaker, what drew you to filmmaking, and then kind of bring us up to the present, but just like, broad strokes.
Sure, sure, totally. So I actually did not, I went to university, contrary to Wikipedia, and I'm saying this publicly. For some reason, Wikipedia thinks I went to Harvard. I did not go to Harvard.
That is hilarious.
I worked for a professor at Harvard University. So I think they conflated that and I'm flattered, but I did not go. It's totally false. I went to SUNY Purchase. I went to a state school
It's
and I'm
basically the
very
same
proud of
thing.
it. You know, so yeah, and so I went to SUNY Purchase. I studied like a bunch of stuff that made no sense as far as a job. I studied what at the time was called cross-cultural anthropology. I did visual art, I did printmaking and animation. And I did and a minor in Spanish and women's studies, and it was really fun. But I came out with like no clue what I wanted to do. I was really saw myself as being a visual artist.
Mhm.
And then I was living in my parents' basement, really miserable in the Boston area, and I'm working for an incredible filmmaker, Susan Pitt, who is
Oh, I know Susan Pitt.
yeah, that's how my roommate's boyfriend it was her son, still is
Mm.
her son. We've lost her, unfortunately, she passed. But I worked for her and on one of her animated films. I was a cell painter, and I would, whatever she needed, I would do.
Wow.
And but she was at Harvard. So she was teaching and I worked for her there and in her office, hence Wikipedia, thinking I went. I did not. And then I ran and I knew she was going to leave. She was finishing her time at Harvard and moving to Wisconsin. There was no going to Wisconsin for me. And, it wasn't financially sound. And Spike Lee was teaching there. And I ran
Mm.
into him on the campus, literally like this, like that type of thing. Thought he was a student because he walked by me wearing a backpack and a puffy coat, and I was like, hi, I know you. Like another, it's somebody else, and I was like, oh my god. After I passed him, I was like, holy shit, oh my god, that's Spike Lee because he looked so young. And
Can you give me a sense of what year this was? Like, what I'm trying to picture, like, what age
92,
Spike Lee.
90,
Oh,
90
92. Okay.
92, I think.
Cool.
And he was doing Malcolm X at the time.
Mhm.
And I turned around once I realized it was him and went back and introduced myself and shook his hand and he was very patient and was like, "Hi, I'm a huge fan." He had done at the time Do the Right Thing and I think he'd done Jungle Fever and She's Gotta Have It. I was
Yeah.
absolutely a huge fan. And then I basically kind of I, you know, I say this lightly, but I basically kind of stalked him around the campus until he gave me a job. I was like, please hire me. I need to get out of here. I'm living in my parents' basement. And he hired me on Malcolm X. And he actually, I think, maybe he made the connection. Maybe it's where the opening was, but he made the connection, I think, between animation and editing because animation is sequential art. And he put me in the edit room. And then I met Sam Pollard. I met Tula Goenka, who is a mentor of mine. She now teaches at Syracuse, and Sonia Gonzalez, and there were all these folks on that team that were very welcoming, very kind to me, and sort of brought me into the world. And then I was in narrative film, scripted film, until 9/11. Honestly, like for until uh 9/11 hit, or a little bit before maybe, and a lot of the scripted work left New York. So, and that
I
was the
see.
segue. And I did but I was in editing. Became an editor. I worked in reality television. I did whatever I had to do, and then it kind of fell into documentary by way of Spike when the levees broke. So he had me edit When the Levees Broke along with Sam Pollard. I mean, this is how, again, Sam Pollard became my mentor.
Wow.
And then that's it. Then I got into documentary and so have
Wow.
been in it ever since.
I just wanna say hi to Grace Lee, who just joined. Grace, you missed your shout
Grace!
out. We already shouted you out, so
We
sorry you missed
did!
it. So, okay, so you land in documentary, um, and you're editing. What was your first experience directing?
So my first experience directing, there were actually 2 films that kind of overlapped. Had a film called Prison Dogs, which I did with, Perry Peltz, who was a partner at that time and is still, it's still an incredibly dear friend. But we did a film and Rudy Valdez shot it for us. It was
Wow.
like his first film as a DP, my first film, and actually Perry's second as a director's. So that was like a coming, we kind of grew up together in that way. But and so that one we shot, it was about a program for where men who were incarcerated trained service dogs for veterans. And so that was a film that we did. And then I
I saw
also
that film. I saw that film a long time ago, and I
it
didn't
was
know
so
you were involved
funny.
with it until, like,
Yeah.
this weekend. So that's why I was
Yeah.
saying it's really fun for me to, like, realize
But
that you've been,
yeah.
like, part of my life even longer than I have known you.
So but overlapping that was a film that I think you probably heard about when we were together in the Chicken and Egg cohort. It was a film about female peacekeepers, UN peacekeepers from Bangladesh who were sent to Haiti, and I made that film with Charmin Obaid Chinoy, and so that was sort of a larger multi-country film. I was curious about, you know, again, UN peacekeeping, but also particularly women, because at that time they were having a push to have female peacekeepers.
Mm,
So, and what the difference was and if it made a difference, et cetera. And to have women on the ground in these vulnerable communities that were either going through a disaster or a
yeah.
war. And so that was the other film. Those were the 2 films that kind of overlapped. And weirdly, the Peacekeepers film came out, I think, before the Prison Dogs film, is even though we'd started Prison Dogs first. I think it just took longer to make one than the other.
Yeah. And so what would you say, like, draws you to documentary in particular? Like, why
Sure.
documentary?
So I think for me, it's interesting. I still absolutely love scripted film. And I feel like scripted film and animation were the starting points for me. And to me, I think documentary, it's again the truth is stranger than fiction, like that piece of it, but also that is has always attracted me. But also I think the possibility of telling a story and making an impact. I think the for me, I mean, obviously documentary ranges so much, it can be about any topic, right? But I think there's to be able to, for me, the social justice aspect of it has been particularly attractive because in scripted film, can be harder to do that, right? To get funding for a film that has some kind of messaging or maybe elevates or gives a platform to folks who are not otherwise represented or to marginalized voices. And I feel like documentary, again, the documentary that's
Yeah,
seen as some of the core ethos of it is like to
absolutely.
tell
Yeah.
untold stories. And so for me, it was a no-brainer. And also, I feel like every documentary, feel so fortunate to be able to meet the people that
Mhm.
participate with us in the documentary. It's like a master class. Like you get this master class and people open their lives to you. And it's such a privilege and an honor
Yeah.
to be part of that. So I think that is the love. That's what made me fall in love with it. And doing When the Levees Broke too. That was really my first doc, and just seeing how powerful that was for me, and I believe for Sam Pollard. It was Katrina had just happened, and it was
Yeah, it was, like,
unfolding.
quick. Yeah, it was, like, quick. I remember
Yeah.
when it came out, yeah.
And
That was a huge
we
event, and it was hugely impactful for the audience. I mean, I think I watched that film, like, 6 times. You know what I mean? Like, it was so essential. It was, like, essential viewing. I remember it
yeah.
was a huge part of my life at that time.
And I remember there was another film I worked on called Take It From Me.
Mm.
by director Emily Apt, and she did this film. She had been a caseworker for welfare recipients, and she kind of felt like a film might be the only way to explain how complicated it was and their stories. And there was I remember this actually was life changing for me. This sort of showed me the power of documentary. There was a young boy in the film who had been taken from his young mother and put in foster care where he was being abused. And after the film, and the mother lost him for reasons that were just not, really it was about poverty. There wasn't that there was neglect or abuse. And again, there's discrimination there. And after the film came out, they returned her child. And I was like, that is like that difference. It was, again, a very small level, but that difference really made me see what could happen. So that I think, and this was a long time ago, but
That's
so that
beautiful.
was really meaningful.
I totally get that, and I remember, like, and I know that, like, in some ways we seem so different on the surface. We make very different types of films, right? But I really relate to that. I really resonate with it. And one of some of my earliest filmmaking heroes were people like George Stoney or like Dee Dee Halleck or like this kind of like world of community media where it was really about like people being able to like take these filmmaking tools that, used to be sort of too expensive, too inaccessible, and being able to like bring it to people who weren't necessarily able to. And that was like absolutely a huge part of why I thought documentary was so intriguing. It is the chance to change the world. You do feel like you're changing the world with every film. You're making a statement about reality. Like you're like altering
Mhm.
reality each time
Yeah.
you make a documentary and like whether it's a small way or a big way. And I think that I do really relate to that. I think that's beautiful.
Well, I think your film, it's so funny. Your film, Hail Satan, like actually had I mean, I think, like, first of all, it was so clever, but who knew? Like, I had no idea,
There's definitely a who knew.
but like, I had no idea that Satanists were actually like a political movement. And I thought, and so that depiction, like, just again, you
Yeah.
opening our eyes to what they actually do and how meaningful it is was so like, the story of them like putting a giant statue of Beelzebub, like, like a government, near a
First
government.
Amendment warriors, baby. Who
Yeah,
knew?
like that is the best. And I feel like we need that now, like it
Totally, I know.
really
Oh,
was
thank you for
so,
saying that. That's very
yeah.
sweet. But yeah, it's just definitely something I've always really admired in your work. I feel like you're very committed to telling stories that you like know need to be told. And so I would sort of just jump to The Perfect Neighbor now, just because it's your most recent completed film, and it was such a massive film. I mean, like you don't need me to blow any smoke up your ass about this. It was a
Thank you.
massive film. Like it was like a defining film of the last year. And so you've been at this for a long time. You've had a lot of success. You've made great films that have been on HBO and like won awards and all this stuff. I'm not in any way trying
Thank
to
you.
say that your career hasn't been like anything other than incredibly impressive all
Thank you.
along. I
Uh-huh.
know that. Some of the people on this call know that. The Perfect Neighbor hit on another level. Do you think that's accurate to say?
It I think it was definitely the most seen film. Like, I have
50
never
million viewers worldwide, as far as we know, something
that
like that.
I have never experienced something like that. And I think for us, again, I think one of the things that is, you know, like with all for all of us as filmmakers, as independent filmmakers, the struggle we all always have is to get your films seen, right? Like, how do we get our films seen? And that's the biggest distribution right now is one of the most challenging things that we have in front of us, and getting worse thanks to the merger that is sort of looming in front of us. Or, again, we can still stop it, y'all. But the idea that this is, again, the sort of the corporatization and the greed that we're facing. But yeah, it's always been a question like, how do we get these films seen? So for me, I think what, what we define as success or just is having your film out there. But eyeballs again feel like they matter so much. I had not dealt with a film that had this. I've never had a film have this kind of viewership that was global. And again, that is the machine too of the distribution. It was, that was Netflix and their marketing tools that they had. And what is fascinating is I think what I learned from that is that, like, when Netflix, the film we made independently with no money. We had support from Park Pictures, the amazing EPs, Soledad O'Brien Productions. But again, it was made with, like, the budget was a micro budget. And we got into Sundance. When the offer came there, from Netflix, they talked about their large audience. They have a large audience that watches crime, and that they could push the film to that. And, obviously they would still treat it like a premium film, but they knew that they would get a lot of eyes on it and it would do well for them. And I was like, what are you talking? What? Like, how?
Because you never saw it that way. You were
Like,
not making this film
no,
thinking this was gonna be like a Netflix true
never,
crime top 10
never.
sensation.
And to me, it was dear
So
to
not
me.
your background though, too.
Yeah,
I mean,
like
we'll get
I
into
was,
this more about why this film was dear to you personally, like, but even beyond that, it's just, like, not, like, the model that you were
yeah.
making films in
Yeah.
ever.
But I too, and I wanna say there's obviously a place for everything, like, no, but it was no shade or no, I mean, no
Yeah, it just
offense
wasn't what you
to
were
true
doing.
crime.
Yeah. Yes.
It wasn't what I thought this was. I saw it as, like, it's a movie about a crime, that happened, and personal, and et cetera, et cetera. And so it took me about half an hour to turn that around in my brain, and to be like, "Wait a minute, what do you mean? How dare you? Wait a second, how could you?" And then I was like, "Oh." Like,
So
and I actually
we will
had,
see this film if I,
I
like, go along.
yes, like, it is and what am is my goal here? Like, could it be a Trojan horse? Like, fine, it's if you package it a certain way and people click on it for that reason, and we can hold them, it could be, they will something else will be received. Ultimately, it was my hope. And I actually had a really interesting conversation with Sabrina Gordon, and I have to share that she, again, a dear friend, colleague, amazing producer, but she had said to me that she had the same experience with Victim Suspect. So she had the film Victim Suspect, and Netflix bought it, and she too was like, "What is this?" The packaging, and to certain folks, because they do, again, they individualize it to their, to audience members. But she was like, "This is terrible. It looks like true crime." And then she was like, "Wait a minute, it's in the top 10." Like, when it came out. So I think, um and in some ways that it was humbling, but it was also, like I have to say, it was most important to me that people see it. So, so that was, so I think that, and that's, like I said, we let the machine do its job.
Yeah, and it worked. So let's back up a little bit and talk about how The Perfect Neighbor came to be. I know that sometimes when you've talked about this film, you've said, sometimes you have your antenna up and you're looking for films, and we've all experienced this, that are filmmakers. We're like, what can I make a film about? And you're like reading the paper and you're looking for stories, or,
Yeah.
whatever. In this case, that's not what happened at all. In this case, the story very much came to you. And so maybe you could
Yes.
talk a little bit about how that happened.
Sure, sure. So The Perfect Neighbor, again, was something that came to me and to Message Pictures, and my partner in Kwan too, who's a producer on the film. Essentially, it came to us because of a family connection. So Ajika Owens was my sister-in-law's best friend, and I have to fact check, really my husband's cousin, but she's my sister-in-law, because culturally we don't differentiate, and we are,
Right.
we're
There's no, like, cool word for cousin-in-law,
that's
so,
my sister-in-law.
we
We
just
are,
go with sister. Yeah.
we're really close. Sometimes she refers to me as her sister, and I'm like, "Now this is weird, like, you can't do that."
Oh,
But
right, right, right. You're
like,
like, "Okay, people are gonna think this is my sister, this is too"
I'm
right.
married to your
Married
brother,
to your
like,
brother.
it's, we have to differentiate. But anyway, but we are, that is like, it is true love. And so when Anjika was murdered, we got a call, and it was a distress call from family, because my sister-in-law, who lived down in Ocala, had the children. She had taken Anjika's 4 kids.
Mm.
They were trying to fly the mother in. She was totally overwhelmed. She was heartbroken. So my husband and my other sister-in-law, Takima Robinson, who's an executive producer on the film, got on a flight and went immediately, just to be, we're family. That's what you do. You jump in. and we kind of became, and so we were trying to support the family and the kids, and we became sort of media again. We were volunteering, but we kind of got tasked. Everyone was just handed something to do, and we became media liaisons for the family, and for the lawyers who were trying to like get attention to the case, because we know without it, unfortunately, the shootings are so common in Florida, and particularly when Black and brown folks are murdered, it's often swept under the rug. So there were, and Susan was not immediately arrested.
So
You know,
just to put a pin, just to like put a finer point on that, she had not yet been arrested. Part of your concern was that she was not going to be
yes,
arrested, right?
because there was a stand your ground law investigation. So we were, and with stand your ground laws, like in the case of Trayvon Martin, obviously people can murder someone, claim self defense, and walk away. And it's there. It's often the success rate is much higher if the shooter is white and the person who is killed is not. Or is harmed is not. So having that precedent, we were like, she might just walk. And this is, so we were trying to drum up attention. Um, and then, she was eventually arrested, but still the case was like, who knew when it was going to happen? And it's still there, a jury could have found her not guilty. Again, not a fan. I just want to say very clearly, not a fan of the prison industrial complex at all. And, I honestly lean very on the side of abolition, but there was nothing else in place. There could have been an intervention that could have stopped what happened, but in lieu of there being nothing else. And Susan was, obviously she was someone who was dangerous for what she had done. But so 2 months in, we are still working with the family and supporting, and the lawyer sent us the body camera footage to go through. And so that was where the idea for the film was sparked. Before that, we were filming things, but we were filming it mostly thinking for the news, to share with local media or national media, social media. But when I
Right.
saw the body cam
So people that have
footage,
seen the film will know that there's some footage in there. It's kind of toward the end, right? Where there's like a vigil, there's a protest, like that's the kind of
yes,
stuff you were filming. So
yes,
that's the
we
only
shot
kind
that.
of original footage in the
Yeah.
movie is that stuff. And you were like working to get it placed on like the Today Show, things like that.
Yeah, we got the family on The View. We were able to get the family on The View. We were able to sort of just, again, trying to draw attention. So those clips were useful for that. And then, but the film came out of that. It was also, to be really honest, it was just all, and I say this, it was all like my heartbreak and rage and grief around just the systemic failures that happened in this case. And I want to say too, 100%, I believe that the that Susan Lorenz was also failed. Like the system failed her. She should have never had access to multiple guns, which she did. She should have been flagged. There should have been an intervention, but she was, and because I behavior like hers, and I hate to say, like, we know that their grievance, real or perceived, causes, people to behave in ways like Susan did. Like causes people to sometimes decide to do terrible things. And Susan had grievance. Again, real or perceived, she did not feel heard. And so she decided to pick up a gun, and it was a terrible decision. But that whole community was failed. She was failed. The whole thing could have been preventable. But so the
Yeah.
film really came out of me trying to process it, me and my family, my team, and my team at Message Pictures trying to make sense of this. Like, how could this happen? And because the footage went back 2 years and showed so much, it was complete show and not tell. We were able to use it to tell a story. And I also had the most amazing editor. I have to shout her out, Viridiana Lieberman, who I've worked with on a number of
Also, what an
things.
amazing name.
I know, the best
Viridiana
name.
Lieberman is the best name.
I know, it's like it sounds like royalty from a
It
past
really
time.
does.
But
Oh, wait, I wanna go back to I wanna pause on that for 1 second. I just
uh,
wanna stop also and say hi to Don Porter. We shouted you out
oh,
earlier
we
as part of our
did.
chicken and eggs, and now we've got 3/5 of our chicken and egg cohort in this, live together, which we love, and also hi to Judith Helfland. You're a hero to me. You're one of the
Yes,
reasons
chicken and
I'm
egg.
obsessed.
Chicken and
Yes.
egg. Yeah,
Chicken
we
and egg
chatted chicken
forever.
and egg out.
Yeah, so anyway, okay, when you get this footage because the lawyers got the body cam footage and all the
Sure.
other stuff for the case, right? How much footage was there, and why was there so much? And talk about how there was
Sure.
just so much more than
Sure.
you, like, would have expected from something like
So
that.
so I think for body camera, it wasn't when you think about in terms of like a film that we might shoot, it wasn't actually that much, but it was so much for the type of footage that it was, which is body camera footage and ring camera footage and dash cam footage, and then there was audio detective interviews, and then there was the interrogation room footage. But so it was about 30 hours in total that we
So
that
much. It's so
existed.
much. Just to be I think it's just so interesting because usually you might expect 20 minutes or maybe an
Yes.
hour of body cam
Yes.
footage, so
It
you were
was
probably shocked to
we
realize
were
how much there
shocked.
was, and
We
you
were
probably couldn't
shocked.
have known how far back this
No.
conflict had been
That's
brewing.
right, and it went back essentially 2 years, but and the reason was because Susan called the police so frequently, and actually, what's interesting is the community had told us that the footage that they saw that there was actually the police were called almost every day by Susan, so what the police released, what do they have more footage somewhere? We have no idea, we cannot fact check this, but they said that the police were called. Somebody has a really funny comment. Me over here with 30 hours of work. You could make a whole film from it.
You
But the
can, depending
but
on what's in there, and we'll get to this, yeah.
that's right. But I think, yeah, it was we couldn't believe it went back that far and sort of told the story organically. And for us to, I mean, body camera footage is very complicated because it is a tool of surveillance. And, the film too, like, again, it's often used in things like cops and it can be propaganda and it can be, used to surveil vulnerable communities and black and brown people and et cetera, et cetera. It's used, it can be used to defend the police. But we felt like we could use it in this case to actually show this beautiful community as they were before,
Yeah,
because
and
you
even
don't ever
sorry
see
to
that.
yeah, I'm
Go
sorry to
ahead.
I'm talking over you. I'm just, like, so excited to talk to you about this. Um, some of what you were able to do with that body cam footage is not at all what you're expecting. Like you were saying, you see the community through
Yeah.
the footage. I mean, it's, like, unbelievable. You see, like, this multi-generational community that's, like, hanging out together, playing together, taking care of each other, looking out for one
Yes.
another,
Yes.
and it's in the body cam footage. Like, it's, like, the
Yes.
last thing you
Yeah, and you never see oftentimes, unfortunately, when a tragedy like this happens or a crime like this happens, you only see the aftermath. You don't and you have to recreate what the community was like for people, right? And you never get to see, like, a full picture. And I think in this, what was amazing and the police didn't mean to do it, but they captured it. They captured everything you said on multi-generational, interracial, like, multiracial community that was so loving, taking care, raising kids together. Really the American dream. Again, not and they that is like the fantasy of what childhood should be like, that you kids from all the whole surrounding area used to come and play in that street. And it was super important to us to also to make sure we got permission from everybody in the footage. I mean, again, the ethics are critical to us, and which when it comes to children, there's been controversy obviously around this in documentary community. It's really like if you cannot release people, you blur them, right? Like if you cannot get their permission, you must blur them, particularly if you are putting their lives in danger, which, again, with people who are in police body camera footage, like you don't know what their lives are like outside of this interaction. So without their permission, you must blur them. So for us, it was really important to us to go back and find everyone, which we did in reverse. We found, and if we didn't, we blurred them. But there were so many kids who came from other neighborhoods to play on that street that sometimes we couldn't track them down. They were like, "Oh yeah, that's so and so's kid. I don't know where they live." So it was quite. But that again, that neighborhood, just like a perfect microcosm of what
really
things should
was.
be.
It was one of the most moving parts of the film, honestly, and it speaks to a larger thing. So we were just joking about 30 hours of archival footage. Sometimes you have 30 hours of archival footage and there is no story in it, right? Like
Yes.
this is where your many years of being an editor really comes into play. So you get this 30 hours and you just start stringing it out and you see that the story is there. And this is one of the things that's so difficult about documentary filmmaking, and it's not just archival and it's not just about a tragedy either. It's like I always say, like, we always miss the beginning of the story because, like, by the time we realize that we should, like, bring our cameras or, do
Yeah.
whatever, it's, like, already started. Like, we always miss the beginning, like, one way or
Yes.
another.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
sometimes you luck out and discover someone else was there at the beginning, and that is what you saw. So you knew what was happening at that moment in the family's life in terms of the case, in terms of the investigation, but then here you're handed this backstory,
Yes.
years of backstory,
Yeah.
and you start seeing, like, not only is this, like, an incredibly powerful story, but it's in the archive. Like, we could tell this with the archive and almost just the archive. In the end, it's just the archive, and then you have those few things that you shot. Is that right?
Yes. We shot some B-roll of the
Right, some
neighborhood,
sort of atmospheric stuff.
establishing atmospheric shots because there were pieces that were detective interviews and they were just audio, right? There was no, and it's in the beginning. It's the detectives talking to the community members, and for that we wanted. We also felt we wanted to establish the neighborhood, so people understood where they were. So we shot some atmospheric B-roll to put over the audio. Um, and we also created those as we kind of created interstitials because the one thing with the body camera footage is even though it is immersive, I wanted it to play like a scripted film, and that's my scripted background. I wanted it to play like a scripted thriller, or because it kind of felt like a horror film to me, the footage, and it lent itself to that genre. So I wanted it to sort of be this slow boil, but the body camera footage is relentless. Like people having to watch it, back to back to back with no break felt like everyone would get nauseous. So, because the cops do not, I mean, it's not production footage. They like wander around, they don't hold, they like, they
Yeah.
put their hands in front of the
Sometimes the
camera.
sound is rough,
Yeah,
whatever.
no,
But
we
all of
we
that, as you said, adds to the horror feeling of it, right? I mean, there's a whole
yes,
genre of horror called found footage,
totally.
and, like, that comes from the feeling that, like, that intimacy and that immediacy of, like,
That's right.
that kind of amateur, not
Mhm.
professional footage does have a certain kind of power.
That's right. It makes you feel that my goal was to make people feel that they were a neighbor, that they were there, that they are in it. And I think those interstitials that were meant to break it up for people a little bit, to give some context, et cetera, you know? Uh, and yeah, but that was sort of all that we shot was those interstitials and then the pieces that came after.
So let's jump to the reception, and, we kind of hinted at this earlier. You have a very long, storied, prestigious career. Nonetheless, you suddenly last year found yourself with, like, a mega hit, and so part of my interest in talking to you has been because we've texted and, like, checked in here and there, but I'm just like, what was it like, Geeta? Like, what has the last, like, year and a half of your life been like? So just for anyone who's unaware, the movie goes to Sundance. It gets bought by Netflix, right? We've already covered this. 50 million people around the world see it. It wins every award, and then it's nominated for an Oscar. And then just to top it off, you're also nominated for another Oscar, which isn't even like possible, but it happened because you were nominated for both directing a short documentary. I mean, talk about breaking through as a director. You're nominated for a documentary for the short documentary category too. Sorry, what was the name of that film? My mind just blanked it out.
The devil is busy.
Thank you. God, it's a beautiful, great film. Sorry, my brain
No,
didn't
no,
call
don't
the
worry.
title. So it's got to be crazy. I mean, from what I know of campaigning for an Oscar, just in and of itself, like I've heard that's insane and like crazy. I'm sure you had to like do things you've never had to do before. So, on a personal, like Geeta level, what was all of that like for you? What was great
Sure.
about it? What was challenging? Are you tired? Have you had a chance to take a nap yet?
Have I aged more? Like my hair completely white? No, I think so, it was both like wonderful and exhausting and mind-blowing. It was kind of everything. It's everything everywhere all at once. Like if I may. Like there's but I think the really I can't I think every filmmaker's dream is to be able to put their film out in the world and then to be able to interact with people about it. So I think I felt incredibly blessed for the reception. And the reception, what's interesting is the film we premiered at Sundance, and then there was we sort of took the film on the festival tour and then it released in October. So there was a fairly long period of time where we were just doing again, the festival run.
Something that
And
you've done many times before, you
yeah,
know?
and I have to say the festival run is always my favorite part of the process because you get to play it in front of an audience, you get to see live reactions, the audiences vary. I mean, definitely people who go to film festivals are a little bit self-selecting, like you but still, it's still different audiences depending on where you are in the country, right? And I think it's that experience of being able to afterwards talk to people, get their feedback, that is so meaningful. And to see, they tell you if the film affected them. They also tell you what they thought you did wrong. They tell you everything, but that is kind of to me, that is the reward, is that process. And then two, and one, I think the campaign really kicks in the fall, right? It's like it starts to kick in the fall. And for us, it kicked in hard. You're sort of soft campaigning through the year, I realized. This was my first Oscar campaign at this level, and then it became 2 films.
2 films.
Fortunately yeah. On The Devil Is Busy, I had an amazing co-director. So, Crystal and Hampton, who is my best this was take your family to work day for all of us because my co-director on The Devil Is Busy is my best friend from college. So, Crystal and Hampton, we've worked together and she's been a producer for me. But this was her first time directing. And I was like, holy shit. And then it got nominated. So and she was, I think, the only Black female director to be nominated this year. So
Wow.
that was huge. And then so she ended up carrying some of like maybe a bit more of the work for The Devil Is Busy. Thank God there were 2 of us, and she did it so beautifully. And also there was the overlap too of Soledad O'Brien Productions. They spearheaded that project, The Devil Is Busy. So
Oh, I
so
didn't
we
know
had
that.
they were
Across
across
both projects.
both
Oh, interesting.
projects. So it definitely was a family affair, and I think that was also the best part of it because we were like this big, loud kind of like group of people everywhere we went, and deeply connected. We were also predominantly it was a really diverse. We were really diverse, and I think that was something you don't always see. And so in folks who get nominated. So that was a lot of fun. And for the most part, I think like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed the campaign. You get to meet people. There is a lot of there's a lot of campaigning. That part is challenging because it's hard to or feels awkward to self promote. That is not something that culturally, um, that I feel super comfortable with. I think it's just not something that, as a South Asian woman, you're not supposed to brag. Like we're not taught to brag, and I maybe we should be, but at least that's my experience. And I felt so it was that part is a bit challenging to have to constantly be like, this is, like you want people to just think people should sort of just if it should
Just
be on
do the
merit.
film. Love it.
Yeah,
Of course,
yeah,
yeah.
hopefully it's on merit and you don't wanna, shove them in one
But,
direction or
like, on
another.
a logistical level, quite literally, what were your days like? Were you just, flying from event to event for,
There
like,
were
a
a
year and a half of your
There were
life?
so the first half of the year, there were definitely festivals. There were a lot of festivals and events, but there was I feel like I said, it was in September that it ramped up in a way that I was like, "Oh, shit," because everybody thing kicked into gear. So the fall into the winter, into up until the Oscars then it became a lot of flights here and there and, events and all of that. And, yeah, there were days where I was like, "Where am I and who am I?" And, like, do I have clean underwear? And but, rinse it in the sink, but for the most part, I think it was, I feel fortunate, I do feel fortunate. I think the one thing I'll say though, that about this particular film that there is after the Oscars, win or lose, there is a cliff that because you have been out on the road and doing so much and talking about it. And I think, and talking about the film and living and eating and breathing it. But I think to this film, what I realized was that it was a distraction from the grief in some ways. Like we very quickly, myself and the team, and we 2 months after Ajika was killed, we were like, we were making a film. And it was a mission. And we were like, we're going to make this film and the whole world's going to know her name. And this is somehow I'm going to make this right. And I think when, for us, there's obviously this incredible impact campaign that is carrying on with the film. But for the filmmaking team, it's really sort of after the Oscars that, the sort of that process is over. And I think for a week or two afterwards, and I talked to my friends and colleagues who are also in it, but I was like, what is this feeling? Like, what is this grief? And it was sort of we hadn't really processed what had happened properly, I think, because we were so busy, with the film became a buffer because we were just like, we're on this march and we're going to do all these, do all this other stuff. And then suddenly we were just left with the fact that, we can't bring her back. She's gone. We can't really fix it for the kids. Like we did with the sale to Netflix, we gave the majority of the money to the family. That was really important to me. And that was one of the reasons too, I hoped if we made the film when we sold it, which was like a crapshoot, that's I could give something back I could do something for them. But even that, it doesn't fix it,
Right.
It doesn't fix it. So I think after there was a couple weeks for sure of just like having to walk through the grief that we had avoided somehow, we had deflected. And so that was for me, the most surprising part. And so many people had warned me that could happen, that would happen, or that there was this sort of drop off afterwards. And I had sort of been like, I don't know if I believed it. I was like, no, what do you mean? Like, how can that? Like,
You're like, I'm a veteran. I've been doing this for years,
yes. And there is a humbling moment where I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, why do I feel this way? And I remember turning to Nakan, my partner, and saying to him, and it was probably it seems so foolish now, but I turned to him and I said, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel like somebody died? And he was like, Geeta, someone did die. Remember? Like we made this film, but it's like in my head, I hadn't made that, like I hadn't put it all together. So I think but like I said, it's been time helps. We're on the other side of it. There's a beautiful impact campaign that's
Yeah, I
really
wanna hear about
doing.
that. Can you talk about the impact campaign?
Yeah, so the impact campaign is doing, what I think is the most important work. So that's led by Ajika's mother, Pamela Dias, and my sister-in-law, Takima Robinson, who comes from a background in activism and philanthropy. So they started this organization called standinginthegapfund.org, and it's basically to service victims of violence, gun violence, race-based violence, because when Ajika was killed, there was nothing like that's why so many people have to start a GoFundMe because are no resources like to pay for the funeral, the lawyers, all the things that are needed to move, to do anything. And it's like people are suddenly left struggling. So that was one of the points of standing in the gap, but it's also to push back against stand your ground laws state by state. And they've gotten support now. They're amazing. They've gotten support from Steven Spielberg's foundation. They've gotten support from they're really doing the work, and they're working to try to tie the stand your ground issues in multiple states to the midterms.
I
So
see.
there's a lot of great political work happening,
I'm
and
so happy to hear that. I'm so happy
that's
to
the
hear that.
goal.
And I feel like you handled it so well with the film itself. I mean, the film itself doesn't do all that stuff. Like, it's not
No,
like now we have an interview with someone to tell you about Stand Your Ground. There's a couple, I think, text cards at the
that's it.
end that sort of give you a little context around that and sort of hint at this larger. But I think you just made such an incredible artistic choice to like make the film feel like a thriller. Like, it was just so I mean, I've already told you how much
Thank
I
you.
love this film many
Thank
times,
you.
but I'll just say again, I just think it's a masterpiece, and I think it's like, you made so many intelligent decisions to let the story speak for itself. The story, you actually had the opportunity to detail what a situation like this actually is, like what it feels like, what it looks like, how it goes, and not just by doing interview and not just by doing retrospective. And that's the last thing I wanted to talk to you about because I've heard you also talk about the value of the archive in that it allowed you to tell the story without having to do what? Sit down the family and ask them
Yeah.
to talk in an interview
Yeah,
for
thank you.
10 hours about this
Yeah.
horrible thing. So it allowed you to kind of tell the story without having to, like, maybe re-traumatize
That's fair.
people. Can you talk about that a little bit? I
Sure.
feel like
So
that must have been, like, such a relief for you to
no,
be able to.
honestly, it was, and one of the reasons in the beginning that because there was, obviously as a documentary filmmaker, like, and you said this about your most recent film, within a few days of when something happens, there's a story, you're like, should I document this? Should this be a film? Will there be power in it? Can I make change or whatever? Or is
Mhm.
it just something fun to follow? For me, I didn't because it was so close and I wasn't I didn't when we before we knew we had that archive, the footage, didn't wanna make a film because I was like, "This is so hurtful." Like, having to watch them go on the news, having to watch them tell the story and hold it together for that, having seen the funeral, like, having been at like, it just felt like it wasn't the right thing to do,
I mean,
and
there's
I
so many kids involved. I mean, it's just
it's like, what am I gonna like, no, like, they just need to focus on healing, and I think the archive absolutely allowed for us to tell the story without needing that, and I think that we needing to involve them in that way. What was interesting too is that it was really important to me that the family bless say yes to the project, and if and consent is fluid, as we know, but at the beginning, when I got the footage, I spoke to Ajika's mother, Pamela, and asked her, like, "Do you want me to do this?" And I think she thought I was insane because she was just like, "Make a like, what is that gonna?"
like
She
film
didn't
on a
know what that
body cam
meant.
footage? Yeah.
Yeah, like, "What do you wanna
Fair
what are you
enough.
gonna do?"
Most people don't. Most people have no
Yeah,
idea.
and she was grieving, so
Yes.
she was like she knew she wanted something more for her daughter's story and legacy, she said, so she was like, "Go ahead and do it," and so we went off and did it completely separate, and then before Sundance, I sent it to her and was like, you need to watch this." I was like, "I'll fly down." She was like, "No, I wanna do it alone." And I was like, "And you have to tell me what you want. Do you want this out in the world? Or we can just listen, it can go in the garbage. Like, we can toss it in the trash because this is her life. Like, this is, your family. And it could just be my therapy. It could have been my therapy process. It can go away." And she watched it twice. It was very hard, obviously, but she decided she wanted to continue, and she wanted
Amazing.
the world to
It's
see it.
amazing. What an amazing gift she did. She
She's
created
so
that
brave.
gift for the world.
She's the bravest. Honestly, the bravest, one of the bravest people I absolutely know. And so then we went on with and she's sort of, she had seen everything in the film. I was like, "If you want anything to come out, you tell me." She was like, "Leave it in. People need to see the cost of gun violence. Like, let them see it. Like, if we have to be heartbroken, people need to know,
I mean,
So,
there's some scenes like there I mean, I don't wanna talk about it in too much detail or I'll start
yeah,
crying.
I know.
We're getting toward the end, but, there are some scenes that are just they're so incredibly difficult to watch, but I'm just so thankful that you put them in the film, that the family allowed them to be seen, 'cause it's exactly what you're saying. It's like, this is reality, this is what actually happens, and, we need to see that, we need to know. When
Yeah.
we don't see that and as you were saying before, like, being able to see the community before and after is
Yes.
so important, not just after.
Yeah,
I
that's
bet
right.
you wouldn't have made this film if it was just after. I just know because I don't know how you
No,
could have created this sort of time before, you know? Here's
no.
my last question. It's the most important question, Geeta. Did you get to work with a stylist for the Oscars, and what was that like? I saw you in some pretty amazing looks, and I
Thank
was like,
you. So
Geeta's
there
gorgeous and always looks amazing and fashionable,
oh
but it
my
looks
god.
like she got to, like, dress I was, like, so happy to see you all, like, dressed up.
Thank you. No, I just have to say I am the lowest maintenance person when it comes to like as a like a true filmmaker, like a behind the camera person. That actually was the most challenging part of like I was like,
Right.
"Do you not want me to what? You want me to like I have to do what? Like I have to
So
what?
many
Like
pictures.
like
We don't
but
know how to
like
pose for pictures. We're
yeah,
just like, these weird
no.
gremlins who, like,
Yeah.
hide behind the camera and try not to get in
Yeah.
the way.
Like, I would show up in sweatpants if given you know what I mean, my opportunity, but so there was definitely there was a woman who, her name is Anita Dongre, she's an Indian designer who, was really generous and, like, allowed me she has, like, a rack, I guess, of things that for media, so she allowed me to use, to like take some of the clothes for different events, like for the BAFTAs, for some of the awards things. I was able to wear her outfits, and that
Yeah.
saved my life, because
Yeah.
it would have been
Your
pretty
stuff
rough.
was great. You looked amazing.
Thank you, thank you. And
Yeah, here I
then
am I'm here with the hard-hitting questions, Geeta. I wanna hear about
it's
the
no, it's
stuff
listen, it
the
was like I
designers that you
said,
wore.
that was the most challenging thing for me, because 'cause I'm totally Ali Wong at heart. Like, I don't wanna lean in, I wanna lie down, like, when it comes to that, not interested. But, and then I had the most incredible designer, and I'm completely blanking on his name right now. He did my dress for the Oscars,
Okay,
and that
great.
was
You'll send me
actually
his name
something
later
I
when you
will
remember
send
it,
you
and
his
I'll put it
name.
in the notes. It's great.
That's a like, sorry,
No, it's
talk
fine.
about the brain. But and that was something that actually, Whoopi Goldberg really generously, like, gave me that dress.
You're
So,
kidding.
I am not kidding. So that was
Are
pretty
you
incredible.
and so what are you doing these days?
So I'm actually doing a film on Whoopi. So
I
that
know,
is
I'm so
the
excited about
yeah,
this.
and I mean, I have to say, like, what an inspiring person, particularly at this time, like, again, a Black woman who was such a renegade in Hollywood, refused to change, refused to, again, did not, look like what Hollywood defined as, like, the typical beauty, wore dreadlocks, never cut them, like, again, a woman who just, like, she literally redefined Hollywood and kicked open so many doors. So she's been, and I also need something, that is a little bit
You don't
lighter,
say.
like something that might, like, we could use some laughter and some
Yeah, and
joy.
I was talking to, my friend Margaret Brown last week about and I don't know if you know Margaret, but she just finished this HBO
Mhm.
series called The Yogurt Shop Murders, and she also
Yes.
was coming off of, several years of sort of confronting some of the most horrible trauma, a whole community that's traumatized. And she was just talking about like, man, coming off of these projects about these horrible tragedies, like you need to like allow yourself to take a little break and like do something kind of lighter. Like I cannot imagine going right into something else very serious. I can't
No.
wait to see what you do with Whoopi's story. I think it's going to be
Thank
amazing.
you. Thank you.
When's it going to be coming out? Do we
It's
know?
not for a while,
For a
because we
while.
we started basically right before the Oscars, and then right at the week after the Oscars, we had a shoot, and I was like, "Who planned this?" Like, it was like, "Whose terrible idea was this?"
Oh
But it
god, I
was
know.
also kinda
The joke
good.
I make, like, 10 times a week where I'm like, "Who's my boss is the worst boss." Like, I have the worst
Exactly.
boss, and
Who
no one's
made
ever
this
had a worse boss than
schedule?
than me, and then I'm like, "It's just me. I'm doing this to myself.
Totally,
Why?" Oh
totally.
god.
It's like our company, but we were like, "Well, it'll be fine," like, we didn't
Yeah.
know.
I'm
We didn't
glad,
know.
I'm glad. I'm glad that you have that going on now. Well, this
Yeah.
was so fun, Geeta. It's always good to see
Oh,
you. You're such an inspiration to me, really.
thank
I hold
you.
you in just like such high esteem and I have so much respect for all the work you do. And I'm just really glad that I could steal you for an hour and
Well,
share your wisdom with
anytime.
my subscribers and the masses and whoever else showed up today.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a bunch of people on here who have a lot of wisdom too, I feel
I
like we
know,
should be
I know,
sharing,
I know, I
you
know.
know?
So this was super fun and I really appreciate it. And I hope I get to see you soon. We also, for anyone who got here a little later, just realized that we live very close to one another in Brooklyn, which we somehow didn't know. And so now we can hang out in person more often.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I would love that, and everybody needs to go see your film.
Oh,
That
yeah.
yeah.
Wild Inside, everybody. My Flacco the Owl documentary is premiering in Central Park in a free public screening on July 29th. We just dropped the trailer today.
That is
So,
so I cannot wait.
thank you for telling me to promote myself at the end of this. That was very nice of you.
Very
It's very
important.
that's very, like, what I would expect from you.
Yeah, talk about your film. I can't wait to see it. It's gonna be so
Thank
good.
you. It's gonna be so fun. You guys are the best. Thank you everyone who came, and I'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.